Welcome to RVing in New England, the nation's only forum that puts you on stage with some of the biggest names in the RV industry. And now your hosts, John DePietro and Bob Zagami.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
we have a great night in store for you, that's for sure.
I don't know what button I was hitting. So we got Uncle Bernie with us again tonight because Mr. DePietro is on his way flying back from Rome. He posted one this morning, and he'll be back next week. And so we got an interesting show because I've been talking to Mike Sokol, and the last two GMI shows were very popular. One got 26,000 views, and the other one's close to 10,000 views. And this is a topical point in the RV industry, and Mike is at the top of that pyramid because he's the guy that's going to design a lot of the testing and systems themselves. Bernie, what are you up to in your life?
Well, it's really interesting what's going on here. I'm more excited about this GMI thing. In the guests that we have on tonight, we were talking a little bit before the show, and I think Frank Palange's new nickname is going to be the Flash because he talks about his electrical experiences, and we have Walter, who also had quite a unique one. And then we have Jason Cole with us, who we all know and love, and we're going to have a great night, because I think we're going to get down to a little bit more basic thought process so we can better understand the actual, maybe the why this is important, but in how this is a problem, so I need to find that out so I can explain it to other people for sure.
Well, that's why Mike suggested that we do a RV user panel, because they're out there every day and they hear the stories around the campfire, and they got their rigs. They've invested a lot of money in them. They want to make sure they take care of them. Before we jump in there, I just want to do three things that I came across my desk today from Las Vegas, where RV Day is. And congratulations to Longview RV. They were one of the top 3 dealers. And there was a contest this year from Care Camps Foundation, which, of course, gives camping adventures to young kids with cancer and their families. And Longview was in the top 3. They just mentioned it as Windsor Lakes, but it's Windsor Locks. And then congratulations to Lexi Roberts, who continues to make headlines in the industry from Longview RV. She's awarded the 2025 NCM Leadership Development Scholarship, and as a scholarship to she gets to pick out 3 out of 5 training programs. It used to be the Spader training. They've done a lot of training for RV dealers across the country. And our friends up at Campers Inn were recognized, and Jeff accepted the award. They have donated over $1 million in recent years to the Care Camps Foundation. In one event alone, the Hirsch family contributed more than $400,000. And that's amazing. There's going to be a lot of kids going to camp. So should we bring up our friends? Boom, boom.
All right, Mike Sokol, Walter Swenson, and Frank Palange, and Jason Cole. What a gang! It's the
everybody. How are we doing?
Good evening, everybody.
What a gang! What a gang!
Here's a story.
No, oh no! Stop. You're
supposed to. It should be a pretty good meeting. We don't have the Petro tonight.
That's right.
He's not going to be hitting the timeout button all the time.
He's probably driving some stewardess or flight attendant crazy on his way across the ocean, and Mary Beth will be hiding behind
a magazine.
Say maybe he won't do that. Michael, this was your idea to have RV users on, and why is it important to you? And you can kick it off tonight and give a flavor for what GMI is, and we're going to go for the discussion.
Okay, so in a nutshell, this is something, it's called the Grounding Monitor Interrupter. And this is now a mandate from the RV industry that sometime in the next year or so, and we'll be talking more about that in a minute, there's going to be an extra safety device that's added onto all new RVs. And its job is to help us to keep from getting shocked. Now, I've been a big proponent of this for the RV industry for 15 years that I've been writing about hot skin voltages and how to stay safe and all that. But my actual background in this stretches back 50 plus years to the mid 70s. I'm a rock and roll sound engineer and a musician. And I had done all kinds of studies and tests and such to help keep musicians safe on stage. So when I started to see people getting shocked in RVs and some dying every year, I thought this was a good time to step in. In the last 5 years or so, the NEC, the National Electrical Code Group, and RVIA have been working on creating this new device. It's called the GMI, Grounding Monitor Interrupter. And its job is to confirm that the grounding systems on RVs are properly hooked up at campgrounds in a nutshell. But the main thing is it for to be a proactive device to make sure that the chassis, skin, and everything of your RV has not developed a voltage on it that can cause you to be shocked or even electrocuted, shocked to death.
Wow. It's interesting. And this is only going to go on new RVs, because at the stage that we're at right now, there are no products. There are no testing procedures, and there are no products. So why don't you give us the update, the very latest news that nobody else in the country probably has, because we just got it today.
I just got it this morning. So RVIA, their group on this had a meeting yesterday afternoon, and one of the members called me this morning and they said, "Oh, we see you're going to be talking to that Zagami guy tonight. Maybe you should have this new info."
All
And
right,
so
here it is.
Here it is. This is the official poop, as it were. Originally, this was going to have a September 1st, 2026 launch date, that all new RVs built on that date or after were going to have this GMI device. But due to the fact that they'd have to build 300,000 of these things, and they don't even have any actual production units yet, they've decided to not decide just yet. So what's happening is that the next meeting, which is supposed to be in March of 2026, with RVIA and NEC and the groups involved, they are going to decide at that point when this will actually become enabled. And so it definitely is not going to happen in September of 26, likely in 27 sometime, but I'll know more as we go along. So it's been pushed back basically a year, just because you've got to build, what do they make a year in RVs? 300, 400,000 RVs?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
You'd have to build 300,000 or 400,000 of these devices, and they're still in prototype testing stages right now. So that's the official news that just came out today from my guys on the committees.
And that's really important, because I think that, they have to make sure that this product is going to work. It's not going to cause a problem. It's not going to have a false positive sort of reading and then shut down the power in the RVs when people need it. So I hope they do their diligence and get it done right. I got a question that's kind of winds way back, and I apologize for the simpleness of it, but I really want to know the function of the ground, and why it's so important, and why when you don't have a ground you can possibly get that hot skin like you were talking about.
Okay, and the thing that's interesting, the word hot skin is only used by the RV industry. All the other industries call it something different. It'll be a contact voltage or a stray voltage or a variety of other things. So Bob, can you put up that slide of my intrepid little guy that's getting shocked? Or the other one? There we go. So basically what happens is, if your RV develops a hot skin voltage from a lost ground, so it has to have a lost ground at all for this to occur. Then if you're standing on the actual earth and your feet are damp or wet, and you reach up and touch any metal part on the RV, and virtually everything metal on the RV is bonded to the chassis and the skin of coming in, then current can flow through you. And you can see our guy touching a little door handle on an RV. It's going through the middle of him, and in the middle of him is his heart. It only takes 10 to 20 milliamperes of current. That's thousandths of an ampere of current to put your heart into fibrillation. And basically it stops pumping blood. So that's why if you feel a shock on an RV and it didn't kill you, that I always say that's a little angel tapping you on the shoulder saying, the next shock could kill you. So don't do that. Okay. So now if you want to see where the grounding stuff comes from, Bob, can you flip up that other slide for me if you would be so kind? So this is from my days of, I was actual mechanical draftsman back in the days, an electrical draftsman. So on this left side of this, you can see this is where the voltage is coming in from the power company. And in the middle is your campground service panel. Now down on the very bottom of this, you see that green wire that's coming from the neutral ground bonding point over to the G there on the kind of in the middle right. That is the ground wire. Now your ground wire is actually connected from the main circuit breaker panel and a ground rod and a neutral bond, and it goes all the way through the campground, all the way through the pedestals, all the way through your shore power cord and into your RV's chassis. Now, your chassis is supposed to be connected electrically all the way back. If something goes wrong and that wire is broken anywhere over those hundreds of feet, either by bad connection or a wire that's cut or a bad dog bone adapter, there's nothing to get rid of this current that's occurring in that there's leakage currents inside of your RV. Okay, you can go ahead and kill that if you would, Bob.
Yeah. 1 second. What did it do?
I don't know.
And
so what happens is
I was trying to take a sneak peek to see.
Okay, and so here's the thing. Everything that's plugged in, every device that's plugged in your RV, I don't care what it is, has a little bit of leakage from the line to the chassis. Everything. It could be a couple milliamps. If there's a dead short, it could be 20 or 30 amperes. And that's this fault current, right? If your RV is sitting there and if it's properly grounded, it gets rid of it. It either trips the breaker or it just bleeds it off. If you're not properly grounded, it is waiting for you to ground it. You become the grounding rod. And if you touch that while your hands are wet and your feet are wet, you can have anywhere from 10 to 150 or more milliamps of current through you. It only takes 10 to 20 milliamps to actually to kill you. And so the danger, of course, is a lot of people get very loosey-goosey around electricity. And in your house, it's not a big deal because your floors are generally wood or carpet or whatever. Most of you don't have muddy floors, I don't think, in your house. But in a campground, guess what? You've got wet grass and, you've got mud and gravel and such. So you are naturally grounded. And it's not just you. I don't think we've talked about this, Bob, but it's your pets. So a lot of times I've seen a dog will go and put his paws up on the step of an RV and they'll wince and jump down. And you know why? Wow. They felt the shock. They felt the shock.
So it's that power leakage that needs to get absorbed in the ground.
It needs to go back to the service panel. Now, ground rod at your RV will not fix this. It needs to go back to the service panel through all that connection, and it leaks it off. Now, there's a variety of really interesting other weird things that can happen. In fact, I just had a guy call me today. I think he was down in Florida someplace. And he said, I need to talk to you because I saw this. I've been reading your articles and I found a really, really crazy thing happened. They had, I think, 6 or 7 RVs on a loop. And what happened was something that I call a reflected hot skin condition, where there was a break in the ground wire going back to the service panel. One of the RVs had a short circuit in it. It elevated the voltage on every single camper there and the pedestals to a full 120 volts with 20 or 30 amperes of current behind it. This just happened last week. And so they identified it by going and getting everybody to start shutting stuff off. And so if the ground is done properly, it should be impossible to get shocked. But something like that, that's a really interesting condition that I predicted could happen. I've seen it dozens of times now, because campgrounds are wired with kind of in a daisy chain. They're all kind of hooked together in a big long line. And if there's a break in that ground wire, those 3 or 4 or 5 RVs that are connected together, anything that happens on one happens on all of them. And the real challenge is that you may not know, everything seems to work right fine. Your air conditioner's working, your TV's working, everything's working, except now that the skin of the RV is electrified to up to 120 volts. And it could be these other guys could have something like a water heater element that's burned through, or a wire that's had a screw driven through it. I mean, there's all kinds of failure mechanisms out there. That's what the ground wire is supposed to take care of. If you don't have a ground wire, though,
Speaking of out there, let's see who's out there.
Yeah, good idea.
Anybody out there?
Jim Conboy. Good evening, all. Hope everybody is warm. It's cold here in Mass. Well, guess what, Jim? It's cold here in Florida. Look at Walter. He's got his hooded sweatshirt. I thought it was a parka when he first came on.
Nanu of the North.
Dante, evening. Are you in Florida yet, Dante? I know you're on the way down.
Man, how do you spell that? Say that last name. That's a great name. Vespignani?
Vespignani.
Wow. I'm just plain old Mike.
If you were Italian, if you were Italian, you would have been able to figure that out.
I'm Hungarian.
Don's down in Texas. How's the weather down there, Don? They're freezing up north. We're cold over here in Florida, so I suspect that if you're over in Athens, you're still got some cold weather down there. Heidi Bates. Heidi, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Heidi.
Thanks for joining us, for sure.
Yeah. Dante, cold here in Florida. Yes, it is.
Cold everywhere.
And Miss Ellington is here. I see why it is important for dealers to know about this in advance and for campgrounds. What advantage is there for the campers to know about this change this far in advance? Good question.
That's a great question. Do you want me to answer that one right now? Or
no, I want one of the other guys to do it.
Because education never hurts.
Education never hurts, and one of the challenges with this, and this is what's going to happen once this is implemented. If you have an RV that has a GMI that's properly working, if you go plug into a pedestal that is miswired for any condition, it's going to shut the power down to your RV, and there's no workaround. You're stuck. So campgrounds really need to make sure that their pedestals are wired up to snuff correctly. So it could in fact be that there's a problem that campgrounds may not know about. Now, one of the things I'm developing is a series of tests and training procedures for mobile RV technicians can go double check and make sure all these pedestals are working. But there's somewhere over 1 million pedestals in the United States that I could determine, 1 million, 2, 3, whatever, that have got to be done. Now, they're not going to get all done at the same time, but they're going to need to be cycled through. And so, one of the things that you need to do if you're getting one of these new RVs that has this in it is, well, you're going to want to make sure that the campgrounds that you're going to go to are actually tested to make sure that they'll accept, that they'll be able to provide power to you.
Well, we had that great show last week with the two guys from KO8. I mean, they've already been working on this stuff for a year or two. So when you think about why is it important to the consumers, well, they have to know what is the current situation. If they buy a GMI equipped unit, and I said it last week, some of these dealers are going to sell these things, and they're not going to tell their customers.
I have found, one of the things I have to develop is something as a, part of a PDI, so that the manufacturers, when these things go off the lot, that they make sure that these things are working correctly. And I found that very few technicians understand this. Very few electrical engineers that I know really understand grounding at this level, but it really needs to be done. And of course, now one of the things that is interesting, even though this is probably not going to, the mandate's probably not going to hit until 2027 sometime, manufacturers may in fact that make these GMIs are probably going to offer them to some of the manufacturers. There probably will be ones that will be installed before the mandate. So we could see these things starting to get in RVs the middle of next year. And the other thing too, it looks like there are ideas for retrofit possibilities, so that if somebody could get one, that you can think of this as kind of a super duper EMS kind of a thing, right? There's going to be a mix of these things out there.
So let me ask our illustrious, yes, Frank.
Let me get to the negative stuff before we start talking technical.
No,
At what point are we
Frank.
going to drive the average person out of camping? I mean, you're gonna force these campgrounds to update all their pedestals, and shit flows downhill. People can't afford to go in campgrounds now because they're 80, 90, $100 a night. It's, again, I understand it. I'm a licensed electrician. I understand all that stuff. But at some point, it just becomes, you're going to see the average family's not going to be able to go camping, because it's not just going to be a cost to the RV. Like you said, there's 1 million pedestals, and out of all those pedestals, I bet you 25% minimum are not going to be up to par.
There's a lot of, and so here's the thing. Most of the time they're going to be okay, or it really is. It's not really that the pedestals need to be upgraded. The pedestals need to actually be compliant with existing code. And you know this. If they're compliant with existing code that's been for pedestals for the last 2 decades that I know of, they're going to work. So what happens is the RV campgrounds they've skated by for decades. I have never seen an inspector show up at a campground. Have you? Any of you guys? I haven't.
No.
And yet I have campgrounds that are complaining to me, and they're saying, well, these guys come in, they've got those stupid EMS units on there. They've got those things on there, those surge protectors, and they're telling us power is bad. There's nothing wrong with our power. Look at these other guys. They're doing this just fine. Of course, I've done lots of studies as a consultant of over voltage, under voltage, and a variety of other things on what it does and how it affects the RV. But this primarily is about life safety issues. But yeah, so I don't think that the campgrounds have to go upgrade these things, but I think what they ought to do is maintain what they've got. I mean, therein lies the issue. They just don't.
Right. And I'm not doubting it all, and they should, but it all costs money.
Everything costs money. Everything. Believe me, I know that. I for instance, I've talked about metering pedestals because people are plugging in EVs and wanting to charge them. Man, these guys are coming at me with pitchforks and torches. And I'm like, guys, you plug that EV in, it's going to use an extra 15, 20, $30 a night.
From that 1 week you pay for the upgrade.
God,
yeah.
Who's paying for the extra electricity? And you're right. It is one of these. It is a real problem. But part of the thing that had happened a month or so ago, there was some AI generated press releases apparently that stated that all the pedestals in the United States were going to have these GMI units in it. And that's just wrong. And then was one a couple of weeks ago that said pedestals and RVs are going to have this in it. And that's just wrong. And so now we're down to, yes, the real correct thing is it's only going to be the new RVs that are going to have this. People can retrofit this. But Frank, well, I feel your pain out there. And, people don't want to, they don't want to pay $1 more for this thing. But yet it's a life safety issue. What do we do?
You hit the nail on the nose. The pedestals, the campgrounds aren't up to snuff, so we pass that down to the consumer. And why don't you guys advocate that inspectors go in these places and check them once a year? Then you wouldn't have to put all these devices in and all these big companies making a ton of money and costing the consumer or pricing them right out of enjoyment.
Frank,
Again,
you know,
I
I
understand
tried.
it.
I tried this for 15 years. 15 years. I've been writing about this, doing articles, doing seminars, talking to everybody in the world till I'm blue in the face.
What do you guys, if you don't mind me asking, what do you think you averaged this summer in your campground fees?
Probably around 90, on an average, probably $90 a night. Some
Yeah.
110, 20, 30, some 60, 70.
Depends
Yeah.
on when you're going to. I mean,
Yeah.
we looked at one campground for July, and it was $1,700 for the week, and we're not going.
Good Lord.
That's a lot of money, you know. And
Damn straight.
it's I feel bad, you know. I feel bad. I got nephew that loves camping, and at some point, when is he not going to be able to afford to buy a new trailer because it's got all this stuff in it? And what why we're talking? What do you think it's going to add to the cost of a trailer?
Well, I know that. Okay. So it's going to, I know what's in it because I've actually worked on the designs for these things. It's going to be about equivalent to what an advanced surge protector would do, an EMS or whatever from any of the major companies. It's probably going to be on the order of the retail, probably a couple $100-ish bucks for a 30 amp and 300 plus for the 50 amp versions of it. Because it's got the same stuff in it that a 30 or 50 amp advanced surge protector has in it.
So are we just going to replace? Are we going to replace the existing advanced surge protectors with a complete unit? So now instead of spending $200-300, maybe we'll spend $400 and only have one unit.
It doesn't need to have both. Here's the thing in UL. UL does not require that it has actual surge protection in it. But I think that's silly. I think it really should have surge protection as part of this. So, and the vast majorities of RVs out there don't have any kind of surge devices built into them, and you got to pay extra or whatever. Now, some of them will have like ATSs, automatic transfer switches that'll have, over voltage, under voltage, and whatnot. But yeah, and it is possible. They've talked about this, about having an external unit that could be retrofit. But the ones that's going to be mandated are going to be mounted inside of the RV, and it's going to be mounted inside of this. Now, if the pedestals are wired correctly, then you can just plug in, you don't have a problem. But, when you get into areas that have got things it doesn't like, so for instance, and when I first started writing about this, maybe 15 years ago or so, I forgot, I talked to one of my early readers had been in a campground up in New England, and they said that it was a state campground, and they put in 500 new pedestals. Every single pedestal was wired reverse polarity. Every single one. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, well, they got to change it. I said, now, reverse polarity doesn't guarantee a hot skin condition. But guess what? If it had reverse polarity and you plug in a GMI equipped RV, it will not pass power. So who's responsible for the craziness? I can't believe that you would hire electricians that can't even run a meter. Now, okay, Frank, let me see if you know this. Okay, I think you were talking about three phases.
Let me answer that question for you. You said it was a state park. There's your answer.
Oh,
the
God.
Government would hire. That's the problem. Yeah. That's my wife in the background cleaning the kitchen. Hi, hon. All right, go ahead. I'll take your question.
Okay, so do you know what high leg delta is?
A what?
High leg delta, hot leg delta, wild leg delta, 3-phase?
3-phase, yeah.
3-phase. Okay, they're allowing 3-phase in campgrounds now.
For what?
Power for all the pedestals.
Yeah, but
look at them. Look at the look of incredulous look. 3-phase power.
But it wouldn't be 3-phase at every panel.
Well, it's every 2 phases. It's 2 phases. It's X, Y, Y, Z, Z, Y, A. Yeah, it's just blah, blah, blah. Now, here's the point. Okay, so now, normally it's what we call 208, 120, 3-phase. Right. There is a flavor of 3-phase. It's called high leg delta, where every third circuit breaker measures 120 to neutral, 120 to neutral, and then 208 to neutral. 120, 120, 208. I had a campground wire up a half a dozen pedestals to the 208 volt legs and powered them up. These guys didn't even have a meter. And they showed up in one of my classes talking about this stuff. And they said people were plugging in their RVs and they were blowing up stuff at 208 volts instead of 120, right? And the campground owners kept saying, it must be a lightning strike that's doing it. Until one of the guys who'd read my articles had said, I put a meter on this. Why am I measuring like 208 volts? And it turns out that these guys who fancied themselves as electricians never even used a meter. They said, every third circuit breaker is not used in this big panel. We can just hook onto those. Duh.
Walter and Jason, you've been out there all summer.
Yes.
When you're around the campfire, have the campers started to talk about this? Have you heard anything?
Yeah. So this one will bother Mike probably extensively. So the conversation happened about 2 weeks ago, and the conversation went something like this: I don't have to worry about that because that's a hot skin problem, and I only buy fiberglass trailers.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So again, the hot skin is a misnomer because your hitch, your tow vehicle, the bumper, your propane tank, your door, your steps, all of those things are bonded together. So it actually should really be called like a hot chassis condition. But the RV industry, forever they've just called it hot skin. But you're right.
Aluminum trailers, and it was metal skin trailers when it first became a conversation. No, I have not. To be honest with you, the first time I heard about this was your email the other day. So this is the first time I'm hearing of it. The problem I have is, go ahead.
You can blame me for that, Jay. I threw you under the bus and said, call Jay.
That's okay.
Well, we want to get Bob and I, the idea is we want to start the conversation going up to regular RV owners, campers. We want them to know that this is coming so you're not blindsided.
So here's a sort of a follow-on to Frank's conversation, right? So my understanding of GMI and the EMS, like from Progressive Industries, that GMI will detect ground issues better and or different ground situations that an EMS will not. At least that's my understanding. So Mike got
that is correct. So you can kind of think of the GMI being a proactive device. So what it's doing is there's 3 words. Okay, grounding, monitor, interrupter. So the first thing it's looking for is grounding. So grounding is kind of a misnomer. It's really looking for bonding back to the main service panel ground. But and it's supposed to be monitoring this constantly, not just when you plug in the first time. And then when something goes wrong, it's going to interrupt all of the power coming in, including something that could be, a hot ground wire coming in. Now, normally, the RV industry kind of had a bit of a snafu here of 5 or 6 years ago. They were requiring GFCIs. You may remember this in all 30 and 50 amp receptacles, not just the 30s. I warned them it wasn't going to work because it is basically it's a reactive system. So it's looking for leakage. And when it finds leakage, it trips it. So the idea is if you get in the middle of it, that GFCI in your house, it's trying to turn off the power before you die. The voltage is still going through you and the current's still going through you. So the GMI, what it's doing is it is actually looking to make sure that the ground connection is proper at all times so that it can get rid of any currents that happen. So it is kind of, you can think of it as a proactive system. So it does it in advance. It doesn't wait to shock you to disconnect it. It will disconnect it before it shocks you. That's in a nutshell, how that works.
Let's check back in.
We had a lot of good comments here. So how about that 718? Dante had one that we missed. Just two above that. There you go.
So before I plug into the campground power supply, I always test with a surge protector, make sure all the lights are green. If all green, I then plug in the power cord from the RV. Is that the correct procedure?
It is. The key, of course, you want to really, you should be turning the breakers off before you plug in finally, because it's easy to get shocked and such. But the part of the key here is you could have something that you tested right then, and you could have something go bad 5 minutes later or 5 hours later or 5 days later, and you don't know it. And therein kind of lies the problem. Like I said, the reflected hot skin condition is one. There's a bunch of them. These sound like weird names, like reverse polarity bootleg grounds. I had to make all these words up because they don't exist. Right. And I created these conditions in my own lab, in the Funkworks lab, which is a real place. And then I just started saying, okay, now I'm seeing these conditions in campgrounds that are mimicking what I created on my own desk here. So a lot of this stuff, everything that I've talked about, I've tested.
So Sandy, campgrounds will have time to do this and can budget for it with the amount of time that we have. Yeah.
And I think we do. And one of the things that I'm going to try to do is make an affordable program that campground maintenance personnel can actually go through. And a lot of this is just like opening up the pedestals and making sure the wires are tight and cleaning the contacts and looking for loose connections and such. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money unless some wacky things have happened out there. They've cheated to put pedestals together.
Well, we talked about, I think it was last week that it came up. This is a great opportunity for guys like Brian Hadley and mobile reps.
Yes, I think mobile technicians and such would be great. And, some of this is, there's like a triage kind of a thing. You just go through and make sure which pedestals are looking good right now that would pass. And then what you do is the ones that don't pass, you've got to go figure out what you've got to do to repair them. But a lot of these, and I hate to say this, I saw one a couple of years ago. There was a hurricane, the whole place was underwater for days. The water receded. They just waited for the pedestals to dry out and let people start plugging in. They never even cleaned the dirt and silt out of the pedestals. I'm like, really, guys? Really?
Wow. Some of those grounds might have got washed away in the meantime.
Okay, Frank's got his hand up. Yes, you in the middle.
Is there going to be a device for the campgrounds to own so they can go to each pedestal and do a test?
Right now, there doesn't exist anything like that, but I think a portable unit would do that. But right now, I'm trying to develop an SOP, a standard operating procedure, that you can go through with a couple of simple devices just to do a quickie test. Now, if something goes wrong, of course, you got to go into some deep level studying. But this is also one of the reasons why I think they're delaying the implementation of this. They're just a little ahead of the curve here. And we need to be able to basically do a quickie test on the pedestals, see which ones need to be repaired and maintained, and then start working on that. And as Sandy said, you basically, they're going to have like 2 years to do this. But what will happen a lot of times, people will wait till the 1st of July and they say, well, I guess it's the 4th of July weekend. We better go fix this stuff because we've got a full weekend. And now is the time to budget a little bit and get your people trained up. It used to be, complicated and expensive. Now, I'm doing a lot of video training. In fact, I'm setting up a bunch of classes here on this very specific topic. It'll be part of PRVCA, the Hershey people. Yeah. And so we want to be able to make it available across the country for campgrounds everywhere.
For our RVers, do you agree with what Sandy says here? I'm not sure that's 100% correct. Do you think the campers are going to be well schooled and truly understand this maybe within the next 2 years?
No, I mean, I'm an avid camper and I read quite a bit, but this is the first I'm hearing of it. So
it was a secret until a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Okay. And she's talking about, that in the future, campers knowing about it will help us get the word out. Right. So but you three people, me and, my colleagues, we got to start at some place. So
but I think, go ahead, Jason.
I had a question. I dry camp a couple times a year and use a generator, and we know that a generator can create a ground issue with RVs. Will this be an issue with this unit?
Of course it will.
Yeah. So we're
Okay, now hang on. Okay, hang on. Okay. Do you know the neutral ground bonding plug that you use on inverter generators?
Yeah.
I invented that. I invented that.
Valve.
I'm the guy. I am the guy that invented that. So basically, if you try to take your RV and plug it into a generator, now this doesn't have. See, this is the weird thing about nomenclature. The NEC, the electrical industry, uses the word grounding for all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with ground at all. So basically, this is a neutral ground bonding plug. So if you were go to plug, let's say you want to go just to fire up your little 2,000 watt Honda or whatever, and you want to be able to charge up the batteries and maybe run a refrigerator or whatever, and be getting ready for a campground. If you just go plug in a GMI equipped RV into that, it will not let power through because it doesn't have the proper neutral ground zero voltage reference. But if you just plug in one of those simple little $5 bonding plugs, that will correct it, and that'll work. Now, that is not a cheat, and that is not a workaround. When I first came up with that 15 years ago, I had so many people flaming me. I had inspectors and electricians and consumers and Mike's trying to make this is a cheater plug and everything. And I said, no, it's not a cheater plug. I know how this works. I do this for rock and roll stuff all the time. That's how real generators do this. After 10 years, it finally got put into National Electrical Code as this portable neutral ground bonding device. It took 10 years for them to accept this idea. Now, this same thing will work if you have a GMI equipped RV and you just want to go plug this into your portable generator. But if you don't have it, it won't pass power into your RV.
So today on your EMS, or at least the higher end, you have diagnostic displays. Do you envision this having some form of
it's supposed to have something. It's supposed to have an annunciator, right? It's supposed to have an annunciator, some sort of lighting thing. This will be buried inside of the RV. So I could see that having a Bluetooth connection into the phone. There's a whole bunch of stuff in UL that it can have. Now, UL isn't really so much worried about its actual operation as it is its safety. So there's pages and pages of this that's all about what if it catches on fire, and what if somebody yanks a wire out, and what if somebody has over voltage, and what if it's vibrated, and on and on and on and on and on. Each of the manufacturers then that are building these things, and all of the usual suspects that make the big advanced surge protectors look like they're building these things, they have the ability to put extra bells and whistles on this. So they're going to be, there's some sort of annunciator indicator required. Now, I don't know if it's going to give you enough indication of reverse polarity, whatever's going on, except I think that would be a really good idea. I'm trying to be really careful not to look at manufacturers, their designs, because I've got so much stuff floating around in my head on NDAs right now. I'm worried. I mean, I've got NDAs saying that I can't tell people that I have an NDA with them. I mean, it's just crazy because I used to build nuclear missile guidance systems back in the 80s. I'm very, very serious when somebody says shut up about something. Guess what? So I'm trying to be really careful with this, but I know what it's supposed to do. And I've got all the UL stuff I've got all the NEC stuff. I look at all of that. They can put whatever extra features they want in it. And I think that would be good, but there's some sort of annunciator.
Yeah. I think part of the answer to Sandy's comment though, most RVers don't know that once a year they should check the torque on their power.
They don't know this.
Wires.
I see this all the time that, they got loose connections. Why are my wires burning up in this? And I'm going, because, and what they're going down the road, bouncing down the road. What do you think?
And some of the manufacturers, I know Winnebago, for example, it's in the manual. Not all of them, but some of them.
And they the connector and re-snug the wires behind the connector.
Yeah,
and I use a inch-pound torque driver.
Exactly right. And it's surprisingly easy to break this stuff off. I did this once on camera accidentally. in front of a class, and I had my torque wrench set to like 35 inch-pounds, and it was rated for 25, but I put it in there and I go, well, this is going to, I'm not even thinking about it. I go click, and it just breaks the terminal right off of the thing. I went, oopsies, don't do this.
Here's an idea, and Sandy can take this and run with it. Every state, every association puts out a campground directory every year. Same thing with KOA. They should have a page dedicated to what's coming. If they start doing it now, like in next year's directory, what's coming and why it's coming, and maybe you and Sandy could work on it, Mike. And I can see it in that KOA North American Camping Report, all the state directories.
It's a good thing. It is a good thing. It's going to take some. I mean, okay, now everybody, there's at least one or two of you guys are musicians here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, watch me disappear.
Okay. Musicians. Musicians. Back in the 50s, when I first started playing in the 60s, there were no grounds on anything. We all got shocked. We accepted that. So they put ground wires and everything in grounded receptacles. Everybody belly ached about it. Then you go into the 70s, they started putting GFCIs and everything. Everybody belly ached about it, but it saved lives. And then they put arc fault circuit interrupts in here about 10, 15 years ago, and that stopped fires from happening inside of walls, so that saved lives. This is just one more iteration of it. Nobody's going to like it at first. There's going to be growing pains. If they can get through it without messing anything up, it will save lives.
Yeah. That'd be wonderful, right?
Which is a good thing, and this is a life safety thing, and and look at it this way. I mean, I remember a little barn that was close to my parents' house. It had all of a 15 ampere power line coming in. 15. I saw one that had 5 amp. They had a 5 amp meter. That's it. You have a light bulb or two. We've all now have 200 ampere services in our houses. Everything's electric. Everything around us is electric. I've got RVers are complaining they don't have enough juice with a 50 amp, shore power cord, and they want 2. And I'm like, good golly, what are you guys doing? I've won. They said, I need to know how much power I need. I need to put a heated bidet in my RV.
No, you don't. You don't need that.
And I said, and I've already got the little fireplace in there. How much